here with Miss Connaghan, who is the history teacher for the juniors, and I'm just going to be asking a few questions, and that's all. So, Miss Connaghan, in the article that we were reading, they were talking about black votes and specifically what Trump was saying when he believed that he lost due to a lot of illegal votes, but those illegal votes were just, a big percentage of African American votes. Now, do you believe that his opinion would have changed on those votes if he were to win? Like, let's say in an alternate reality, he actually won the last election. Do you think he would still consider those votes to be valid, or do you think he would still...
I don't know that Trump is an organized enough thinker to even consider things outside of his current kind of position. He sort of has a tendency to lash out at whatever he's angry about and not necessarily think systematically about all of the other factors involved. I think his natural inclination is towards, he probably would still think that those were not valid votes, and he's likely to try and say that anybody who didn't vote for him is an enemy in some ways. Is kind of the way he approaches things, is to say, like, you're for me or against me, and to specifically look for and unfairly categorize groups who are, in his mind, not for him, without necessarily a lot of logic or data or evidence behind it. He just kind of lashes out at groups, and I don't think it would have necessarily changed his mind if he had won.
And the second question is, obviously, your fair share of, the fight for African American security, like the right to vote. Yeah. And do you believe that their fight for the right to vote also helped out other groups with their struggles as well?
Absolutely. So I think any group that is pushing for change, the steps that they take in the process and the elements of their movement are things that other people look to and learn from, right? So if one group is pushing for voting rights, in this case, African American people pushing for voting rights, other groups that also want to be included in that are going to say, well, what do they do? Let me see if I can adapt those tactics for myself and those strategies for myself. I think the other piece of the puzzle is that it sets, like, when there's a legal precedent in place. So, for example, pushing for the 15th Amendment, even though it was not upheld legally for almost a century, right? It was there. And the fact that people had pushed so hard to have that amendment added to the Constitution made it much easier for groups later on to gain their rights, including the enforcement of it. So if, for example, the 15th Amendment had not been included at the end of the Civil War, the civil rights movement that was pushing for voting rights in the 1960s would have had to do so much more work, right? In addition, the application of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 applied to lots of other groups. So it was not just, yes, in fact, you have to follow the 15th Amendment. It was a law or a legal precedent that other groups could then look back to and take to the courts and say, no, this law says this. It says you have to enforce it. And so that legwork that people did to get those laws passed benefits lots of other groups.
Okay. And final question, how was your day today?
My day's been okay. Testing is always a weird schedule, but otherwise okay. How about you?
It'll just started,
Same.
but it's pretty good so far.
Good.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
That was perfect.